And joining us now to discuss this possible government shakeup is Calev Ben David, the anchor of ILTV's Security Brief. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Josh.
So first off, tell us, is this government going to fall?
Look, I've been covering Israeli politics for nearly 4 decades, Josh, and I've seen this movie before. We've all seen it. We saw it last March when the ultra-Orthodox parties threatened to break up the government by not voting for the budget, the annual budget, if there were this law formalizing, legalizing draft exemptions weren't passed, and they blinked then. It doesn't look to me like next week the coalition is in danger. You know, if the ultra-Orthodox parties really wanted to just bring down the government over this, they could just quit the government instead of introducing the bill. Why don't they do that? One is because they would immediately lose all the perks of being in the government, being ministers and getting the budgets for those ministries. Another thing is that, remember, it takes this law to dissolve the Knesset. It needs 4 votes. That could be done in a day, but it could be done over a period of weeks or months. So it looks like this is just round 1 of a game of chicken between the ultra-Orthodox parties and the Netanyahu government.
Tell us, in a time like this, who would gain something, who would lose something, and what could happen to Prime Minister Netanyahu, his future, his path now?
Well, the big winner would be the opposition, as we just heard in that report, which would gain, and presumably people like Naftali Bennett or Avigdor Lieberman, who could end up as the next prime minister. The ultra-Orthodox parties, they would certainly probably hold in an election their same number of seats. They wouldn't lose seats, according to the polls. They might even perhaps gain some, but they would find the government even less willing to serve their interests than the current government. So they certainly wouldn't gain. They would have something to lose here, too. Mm-hmm. But the big loser would be Benjamin Netanyahu, because not only would he be out of office and maybe lose the leadership of the Likud, but remember, he's on trial. And in his corruption cases, his best defense against those cases is serving as prime minister.
Right.
He'd lose that leverage if the government would fall.
Right, so much pressure on a situation like that for him. In terms of society here in Israel, how do people feel about this possible shakeup happening?
Listen, polls show that this government has lost majority support and people would support an election, but there would be ambivalence. People might be wondering why in the midst of this crisis should there be an election at this time with so much, with Israel at war. But there's no question on the issue of these exemptions for the ultra-Orthodox. That is a very unpopular among the general Israeli public, Jewish public now, outside the Haredi sector. That's some reason why even some members of Likud, Yuli Edelstein and some others, are willing potentially to bring down the government because they see permanent damage if this would happen. So no question about it. This is a hot issue, especially in a week we just saw 4 fatalities in Gaza.
Right. So moving over to this nuclear proposal that's kind of in the works right now, we know that the Supreme Leader of Iran basically is rejecting this proposal that went out. He announced this yesterday. What more can you tell us about these developments?
Well, you'll be able to watch this evening, going at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S., our show, Israel Security Brief, this evening. And we have a guest, Robert J. Silverman, a former U.S. diplomat, who really breaks us down. Now, remember, President Trump says no enrichment by Iran. Iran says, no, we reserve the right to enrich uranium. There's a proposal reportedly that Steve Witkoff put forward that would see enrichment in Iran, but not necessarily by Iran, by a consortium of countries that would include Saudi Arabia. But this looks like, as Robert explains in our program, a sort of clever way to try to thread this needle here. It's really a workaround of Donald Trump's pledge. And as Robert says, Israel and its supporters must hold the U.S. and President Trump to his commitment, not only to not allow enrichment of uranium by Iran, but in Iran itself.
Well, yeah, there's just so much at stake, and it affects so many different countries, especially here in the Middle East and Israel as well. Thank you so much, and everyone can watch you tonight, like you said, at 10 p.m.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you.